Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto and Heles God of Destruction from DBS fall in love? Subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And also check the description. So let's begin the story. Night had draped itself over the Hidden Leaf village, the sky a bruised canvas of deep purples and inky blues. Lanterns swung from time-worn posts, their flickering light sketching trembling shadows against ancient stone walls. In the narrow alleys where silence usually reigned, murmurs of unease now stirred. The air vibrated with the expectation of an unknown storm, a prelude to the extraordinary. Naruto Uzumaki paced along a deserted training ground behind the village, his amber eyes alert even in these moments of repose. Every muscle in his lean frame was taut with readiness. He paused near a shattered well, the cool night breeze tugging at the spiky mess of his blonde hair. A subtle tremor rippled beneath his feet, barely noticeable yet impossible to ignore. He squinted at the horizon, as if willing the disturbance to reveal itself. Far beyond the village's ancient ramparts, an unnatural shimmer wove itself into the fabric of the night. The ground quivered as if a hidden heartbeat had quickened, a rhythm foreign to this world. Naruto's senses flared, a honed instinct for danger he had cultivated over years of hardship. He adjusted the weight of his headband and strode toward the source of the unsettling pulse, the soles of his worn sandals slapping decisively against the cobblestones. In a distant clearing lit by a pale, indifferent moon, a small group of shinobi gathered. Their hushed voices were intermingled with anxious glances upward. "Something's off," murmured a young ninja with ink-dark eyes, his voice edged with uncertainty. "I've never felt the earth so unsettled." Kakashi Hatake, his one visible eye scanning the periphery, merely grunted in response. "Stay alert. The air smells like change, and not the kind that comes with a simple storm." Naruto's mind whirled with fragments of intuition, memories of battles fought on familiar soil, moments when the very ground seemed to rebel against the weight of conflict. Tonight, however, the tremors spoke of a power entirely alien. As he approached the outer limits of the village, the air shimmered, bending light as though the night itself were a fragile mirage. Simultaneously, in a realm far removed from the rustic earth and whispered legends of shinobi valor, a different night unfolded. The cosmos had long been a tapestry of order and chaos, but tonight, one thread frayed. In a darkened expanse where starlight was punctured by immense voids, Heles, the solitary god of destruction, watched with an unreadable expression. His presence exuded an almost tangible gravity, as though his very being tugged at the fundamental laws that held galaxies together. Heles stood upon a precipice of swirling cosmic energy, his eyes glimmering with a hue that defied mortal description, an ever-shifting shade of obsidian and twilight. In his realm, where creation and obliteration danced in eternal balance, a ripple had disturbed the sacred equilibrium. He felt it deep in the marrow of existence, a pulse from another dimension, raw and untempered, that beckoned like an unwelcome echo in an otherwise ordered symphony. Without a word, Heles clenched his fist. He summoned the force of his inherent nature, a power both destructive and ineffably refined, and allowed it to surge. In that moment, space itself seemed to writhe, bending in sympathy with his silent call. The cosmic rift manifested as a jagged slit in the continuum, a rupture in reality that glowed with an eerie light reminiscent of dying stars. Back on Earth, as Naruto reached the edge of the village's familiar boundaries, the ground split open with a resonant crack. Dust and shards of earth cascaded downward, and for a heartbeat, time itself appeared to suspend. Naruto halted mid-stride, eyes narrowing at the unfolding spectacle. He crouched low, hands balled into fists, every sense straining to comprehend the anomaly. From the tear in the world, a surge of wind blasted across the training ground, scattering papers and whipping loose strands of hair into a chaotic dance. The wind carried a voice, a deep, resonant murmur that seemed to speak directly into Naruto's mind. It whispered of destiny and change, of two disparate souls linked by an unseen tether. Naruto's heart pounded in a measured cadence, mirroring the beat of an ancient drum. He exhaled slowly and approached the fissure with the cautious resolve of a warrior who had faced death more times than he could recall. His eyes, reflecting the unnatural glow emanating from the crack, searched for meaning in the swirling abyss. In the cosmic expanse, Heles surveyed the rift he had unwittingly conjured. A ripple of curiosity mingled with the gravitas of his duty. The rift expanded, its edges jagged and luminous, beckoning him forward. With a decisive motion, he stepped toward it. Every stride was measured, imbued with the inexorable pull of fate. His cloak, woven from the very darkness of his realm, billowed behind him as he traversed the threshold of two worlds. As the dimensional breach widened, a collision of energies unfolded. The force of two universes meeting sent tremors through the fabric of space, resonating with an intensity that reverberated through every living thing. For a split second, time itself seemed to fracture, moments stretched into infinity, and the future trembled on the edge of uncertainty. Naruto reached the epicenter of the disturbance. His body tensed, his eyes scanning the tumultuous scene. Then, with a burst of resolve, he plunged into the heart of the chaos, leaving the safety of his known world behind. His footsteps, though uncertain, were resolute, driven by an unspoken need to confront whatever lay beyond. In that same instant, Heles emerged from the cosmic rift, his presence a stark counterpoint to the rugged valor of the ninja. He materialized on a plateau that straddled both worlds, a liminal space where remnants of ancient forests collided with the barren, celestial terrain of his own domain. The ground beneath him pulsed with alien energy, and the horizon stretched into an endless void speckled with fractured light. Their meeting was neither grandiose nor dramatic. It unfolded with the quiet inevitability of two forces colliding. Naruto's gaze locked onto the towering figure before him, a being whose aura radiated an otherworldly potency. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the unspoken acknowledgement of mutual purpose and the weight of their respective burdens. Naruto's voice broke the stillness, firm and unwavering. "Who are you?" he demanded, the question edged with both suspicion and determination. Heles regarded the ninja with a measured calm. His tone was low, resonant, and laced with the authority of a celestial arbiter. "I am Heles," he replied, each syllable deliberate and clear, as though speaking a universal truth. "I come from beyond the veil of your world, drawn here by forces neither of us can yet comprehend." A pause settled between them, charged with the tension of two very different lives converging. Naruto's eyes flickered with a mix of defiance and wonder. "For all I know, you could be the enemy," he stated bluntly, a warrior's caution underscoring his words. Heles inclined his head slightly, the gesture both respectful and inscrutable. "Enemies are defined by perspective," he observed. "I do not seek conflict, yet fate has conspired to bring us together." His gaze, unwavering and profound, pierced the distance between them, a bridge across universes built on the fragile promise of understanding. As the two figures regarded each other, the unstable border between their worlds pulsed with intermittent light. The rift behind Heles shimmered like a living entity, its edges undulating as though testing the limits of its newfound existence. In that surreal moment, the lines that separated hero from deity, savior from destroyer, blurred beneath the strain of converging destinies. Naruto shifted his stance, muscles coiled for any sign of attack. "This isn't over," he warned, his voice steady but laced with an intensity born of countless battles. "If you're here to wreak havoc, I won't hesitate." Heles' expression remained impassive, his voice carrying an unexpected softness. "Havoc is not my aim," he insisted. "I serve a duty that transcends the petty conflicts of mortal realms. Yet I find myself bound by circumstances beyond my control." His words, though measured, resonated with a quiet sorrow, a reflection of a solitary existence burdened with the inevitability of destruction. Above them, the night sky writhed with unsettled energy. Stars flared and dimmed in rapid succession, as if reacting to the cosmic collision unfolding beneath them. The ground vibrated once more, a rhythmic pulse that echoed the steady heartbeat of both worlds. In the distance, the ruins of a once proud village, an interstice of nature and civilization, stood silent witness to the merging of realities. A voice, distant and trembling with urgency, pierced the silence. "Naruto, are you out there?" The call came from an unseen comrade, a mixture of concern and command threading through the words. Naruto's eyes darted toward the sound, and for a heartbeat, the tension broke as he recognized the familiar tone. "I'm here," he replied, his voice a blend of reassurance and determination. "Stay back until I know what I'm dealing with." The reply was immediate yet cautious. "We don't know what it is," came the soft, laced caution of another ninja, whose identity was masked by shadows. But it's not like anything we've seen. Heles, still standing on the threshold between dimensions, observed the exchange with a detached curiosity. His presence exuded a timeless authority that belied the fragility of the moment. In the silence that followed, he allowed the tumultuous energies of both worlds to swirl around him, a silent acknowledgement of the forces at play. Naruto stepped closer to the rift, his eyes never leaving Heles. "Why now?" he demanded. "Why would the cosmos tear apart the fabric of our world and bring you here?" Heles hesitated, as though weighing the significance of every syllable. "The balance of existence is shifting," he said slowly, each word deliberate. "I cannot explain the intricacies, only that something stirs in the void, a catalyst that has drawn us both into this vortex of fate." A gust of wind howled across the plateau, rustling the remnants of ancient foliage and scattering dust in a wild ballet. Naruto's gaze hardened as he absorbed the gravity of Heles' words. In that charged moment, his mind raced through every lesson and trial he had endured, from the bitter solitude of his youth to the unyielding battles that had forged his resolve. The notion that forces beyond his comprehension were at work only intensified his determination. "Then we must find answers," Naruto declared, his tone firm. "If the balance is in jeopardy, no one, god or man, can allow it to unravel unchecked." Heles' eyes met Naruto's with a measured intensity. "Perhaps our meeting is not an accident," he murmured, the cadence of his voice both enigmatic and sincere. "In the confluence of our worlds, there may lie a solution, a path to restore equilibrium, albeit one wrought with sacrifice." The air crackled with a mixture of anticipation and foreboding, as if the very cosmos were holding its breath. Around them, the remnants of both realms coalesced into a disjointed tapestry, a shattered village melded with celestial ruins, where time and space merged in silent chaos. Every moment teetered on the edge of violence and revelation, and each heartbeat resonated with the potential for transformation. A low rumble vibrated beneath their feet, drawing the attention of both combatants. From the fractured earth emerged shadows that slithered and coiled like living nightmares. Figures cloaked in darkness advanced, their movements fluid and deliberate. They were neither entirely human nor wholly spectral, bearing the unmistakable marks of an ancient power awakened by the collision of dimensions. "Show yourselves!" Naruto barked, his voice carrying over the cacophony of shifting energies. He spun into a defensive stance, every sinew primed for the impending skirmish. His hand twitched near the pouch of kunai, and his mind raced through the techniques he had honed over years of ceaseless training. Heles' gaze narrowed as he observed the emerging threat. Without a word, he extended his hand, and the ambient energy coalesced around his fingers like liquid midnight. In that brief, silent command, the space between destruction and creation trembled, awaiting the spark that would ignite conflict. The first of the shadowy figures lunged forward, its movements predatory and precise. Naruto intercepted the charge with a swift, arching kick that sliced through the air, his body a blur of controlled ferocity. The ninja's determined shout echoed off the fractured remnants of both worlds. In response, Heles unleashed a surge of cosmic energy, his hand outstretched as if to command the very void. A beam of iridescent force erupted from his palm, meeting the dark assailant in a collision that lit the plateau with spectral brilliance. For a long, suspended moment, the two forces battled, one fueled by mortal resolve, the other by divine duty. Each impact reverberated with the intensity of shattered realities, and the very ground beneath them buckled under the strain. The clash was neither neat nor cinematic. It was raw, elemental, and unyielding, a testament to the unpredictable nature of fate. Naruto dodged a sweeping blow from another shadow, his instincts honed to perfection. "Keep your focus, everyone!" he called out, his voice carrying a mix of urgency and command that stoked the resolve of those fighting by his side. Even as he battled the encroaching darkness, his eyes never left the figure who had emerged from the rift. Heles' stance remained unwavering. His movements, measured and deliberate, betrayed a practiced control over forces that few could fathom. Yet even in his calm, a flicker of uncertainty danced behind his ancient eyes, a silent acknowledgement that the collision of these worlds might bring consequences either could predict. Amid the chaos, time contracted. Every second stretched into an eternity of struggle and survival. The interplay of mortal spirit and cosmic might filled the air with a tangible tension, one that whispered of battles yet to come and destinies that intertwine beyond the limits of reason. Naruto advanced, his every step a testament to the years of hardship that had defined his life. "We fight not just for our world," he declared between rapid strikes and parries, "but for the future that might be forged from this convergence." His voice was steady, even as the storm of conflict swirled around him. Heles responded with a measured nod, his tone soft but imbued with a weight that resonated with the very stars. "Every action echoes through the cosmos," he intoned, the cadence of his words a somber reminder of the responsibility borne by those who wield immense power. "Tonight, our choices will determine not only the fate of our worlds but the nature of all that exists between them." The battle raged on, the silhouettes of combatants merging with the fractured remnants of their surroundings. The boundaries between the familiar and the unknown blurred, leaving behind a landscape that defied conventional logic, a realm where the ashes of one world mingled with the stardust of another. As the frenetic clash ebbed and flowed, Naruto and Heles found themselves fighting back to back for a fleeting moment, a temporary alliance forged in the crucible of conflict. Naruto's swift, agile movements complemented Heles's measured, devastating strikes. Their synchronized efforts, though unspoken, hinted at a potential synergy that transcended the boundaries of their respective existences. Between bursts of action and lulls in the storm, snippets of conversation emerged. "Who are these creatures?" a young ninja gasped as he narrowly evaded a sweeping shadow, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and wonder. "They're the heralds of this rupture," replied another, eyes fixed on the undulating darkness. "They come from the void between worlds, something old and unforgiving." Naruto's own dialogue was punctuated by shouts and terse commands, each word laced with the urgency of a warrior caught in the throes of destiny. "Stay together! Don't let them isolate any of you!" he ordered, the cadence of his voice cutting through the clamor like a clarion call. His gaze, however, remained fixed on Heles, the enigmatic figure whose presence was as perplexing as it was powerful. For a moment, as the tide of battle slowed to a simmer, Naruto and Heles exchanged a look that spoke volumes. There was no need for florid declarations or grandiose vows. Their eyes conveyed the weight of their respective burdens and the spark of something unnameable, a fragile promise born of shared strife and the relentless pursuit of justice. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them shuddered violently. The rift behind Heles pulsed as if in agony, its light intensifying to a blinding crescendo. The very air vibrated with an almost unbearable intensity, and a piercing crack split the sky overhead. In that moment, both warriors froze, their instincts honed to a razor's edge. Naruto's heart pounded with a mix of adrenaline and apprehension. "Something's coming," he whispered, the words barely audible above the rising din of collapsing reality. Heles's dark eyes narrowed as he surveyed the expanding fissure, the divine aura about him flickering in response to the surging energies. From the rift, a towering silhouette began to form, a monstrous amalgam of shadow and raw energy that defied the natural order. It advanced with an inhuman grace, each step sending ripples across the plateau. The creature's form was indistinct, shifting between tangible mass and ethereal mist, yet its intent was unmistakable. It exuded an ancient malice that suggested it had witnessed countless cycles of creation and decay. "Stand firm," Heles intoned, his voice a steady anchor in the midst of the turmoil. "We face not just an enemy, but the embodiment of chaos incarnate." Naruto's gaze hardened as he summoned the latent power coursing through him. "We've overcome worse," he replied, his tone resolute. "No matter what this is, I won't let it tear our world apart." In that charged moment, the battlefield became a crucible of wills. Every heartbeat echoed like a drumbeat of defiance, every clash of power a testament to the resilience of those caught in the collision of worlds. The creature drew nearer, its presence a looming threat that promised further upheaval. And yet, in the convergence of mortal valor and divine might, a fragile alliance had begun to take shape, one that hinted at possibilities either could yet comprehend. As the night deepened and the cosmic forces churned with an almost sentient purpose, Naruto and Heles braced themselves for the coming onslaught. The air trembled with anticipation, the very essence of existence poised on the brink of transformation. In the quiet between the explosions of force and the shouts of combat, a silent vow was forged, a pledge that no matter the cost, they would confront the chaos together. The final echoes of the battle's opening salvo subsided into an ominous lull. The rift's brilliance faded to a steady glow, its light casting long, uncertain shadows across the shattered remnants of two intertwined worlds. Naruto's eyes, fierce with determination, met Heles' somber gaze. In that unspoken exchange lay the promise of further conflict, deeper mysteries, and a destiny that would forever bind them. Two souls thrust together by the relentless currents of fate. As the plateau trembled under the weight of impending doom, the world itself seemed to hold its breath. The convergence of the mortal and the divine had set in motion events that would reshape everything known to them. And though the night was far from over, the promise of answers, and new, unforeseen perils, lingered on the horizon, as palpable as the pulse of life and the echo of destruction. In the distance, beyond the immediate chaos, a faint glimmer of hope stirred amid the ruins, a reminder that even in the darkest of collisions, the spark of redemption might yet flicker. The battle had only just begun, and with every breath, every clash of strength, the promise of a future beyond despair took root in the silent spaces between destruction and creation. As the cosmic rift slowly stabilized, offering no comfort but only the stark reality of change, Naruto clenched his fists and steadied himself. His resolve, tempered by hardship and fueled by an unyielding belief in a better tomorrow, burned brighter than ever. Heles, too, felt a stirring within, a recognition that the forces that had drawn him to this fragile world might also offer a path to something beyond mere annihilation. In that charged silence, as the forces of destiny coiled around them like predatory shadows, both warrior and god prepared for the next chapter of a story that had only just begun. The tension, palpable and unrelenting, promised that the collision of their worlds was but the first ripple in a vast, unfolding saga, one where every action, every whispered word, and every burst of energy would reverberate across the cosmos. The night deepened further, and as the stars resumed their silent vigil overhead, the future wavered at the threshold of uncertainty. With hearts steeled against the encroaching darkness, Naruto and Heles took their positions, aware that the next moment could shatter or solidify the fragile bonds forming between them. The battlefield, now marked by both destruction and the glimmer of hope, held its secrets close, a promise of revelations to come, and the enduring tension of two worlds irrevocably intertwined. As the first light of an uncertain dawn began to breach the horizon, the echo of the cosmic disturbance faded into a solemn murmur. The clash had given birth to questions that demanded answers, and in the stillness that followed, the silent murmur of destiny whispered of trials yet unimagined. Both Naruto and Heles sensed that the events of this night would ripple outward, altering not only the course of their lives but the very fabric of existence itself. In that final, lingering moment before the first rays of daylight pierced the darkness, the collision of worlds left behind a landscape marked by raw energy, unspoken alliances, and the promise of a journey that defied both time and expectation. The unresolved tension hung in the air, a suspenseful prelude to the next chapter, where the true test of their unity, their strength, and their very humanity would soon be laid bare. The dawn beckoned with both light and shadow, and as Naruto and Heles shared one last glance, a look that spoke of courage, uncertainty, and the untold stories of worlds converging, the stage was set for a confrontation that would redefine their destinies. The night's tumult had receded, leaving behind scars and secrets, and the promise of a future where the collision of two disparate souls might spark not only change, but also an unexpected bond. In that fleeting moment, the universe held its breath, teetering on the edge of revelation. And though the night had delivered its fury, the silence that followed was pregnant with the promise of tomorrow, a tomorrow where every clash, every whisper, and every step forward would lead to answers that both bound and separated them. The promise of the unknown hovered on the brink of light, urging them onward into the next chapter of a saga that neither could have foreseen. A thin haze of dust and lingering ash clung to the broken streets, where once thriving city blocks now lay in silent testimony to ruin. The sky, either wholly day nor night, shifted in a surreal gradient of bruised purples and ashen grays, casting long, uncertain shadows across jagged concrete and splintered steel. In this in-between place, reality itself seemed to tremble on the cusp of transformation. Naruto Uzumaki moved through the debris-strewn avenue with measured steps, each footfall resonating on the cracked pavement. His senses, honed by years of training and strife, prickled at every subtle sound, a distant creak of metal, the soft flutter of an errant leaf spiraling in an unseen current. The silence here was a canvas upon which tension painted broad, uneasy strokes. He paused at the threshold of what appeared to be an abandoned public square, where a fractured fountain jutted from the ground like the skeletal remains of some ancient giant. The air hummed with energy that felt alien and volatile. Naruto's hand instinctively reached for the familiar weight of a kunai at his side. Every instinct warned him that this place, straddling two worlds, might hold more than mere memories of past calamities. At the far end of the square, a ripple of energy disrupted the stagnant atmosphere, a pulse that set the hairs on Naruto's neck on edge. He moved forward with the silent grace of a seasoned shinobi, his blue eyes narrowed as he scanned the area. Amid swirling dust and the muted echoes of a collapsing world, a figure emerged, clad in garments that blended futuristic elements with an ethereal austerity. The newcomer's presence exuded a force that seemed both inevitable and cataclysmic. The figure's eyes glowed with a subdued, otherworldly light, hinting at power that lay beyond mortal ken. Every deliberate step he took resonated with an almost cosmic purpose, as if each footfall was measured against the rhythm of the universe. The man, whose name for now would be Heles, carried himself with a quiet dignity and a burden that softened the hardness of his features. His dark hair, swept back in a controlled manner, contrasted sharply with the raw intensity of his gaze. Naruto halted, his heart pounding with an unfamiliar mixture of anticipation and caution. The air between them vibrated with a silent question, as if fate itself had orchestrated this confrontation. For a long, suspended moment either spoke. The city around them, in its desolation, seemed to lean in closer to witness what would unfold. "Who are you?" Naruto finally demanded, his voice low and steady, yet laced with an urgency born of countless battles. His tone was respectful but resolute, a challenge woven into the fabric of his words. Heles regarded the young ninja with an unreadable expression. His lips curved slightly, not in a smile, but in something that might have been recognition or regret. "I am the Keeper of Ends," he replied, his voice measured and resonant, carrying a weight that transcended mere mortal titles. "I traverse the fissures of existence, and today, I stand here by design." The words fell into the space between them, heavy with implication. Naruto's eyes flickered with determination as he tightened his grip on his weapon. "Keeper of Ends? That sounds like a title for a destroyer. I'm no stranger to that kind of power. But I won't let you harm the people I've sworn to protect." Heles's gaze did not waver. Instead, he tilted his head, studying Naruto with an intensity that made the air thrum. "Protection," he repeated, as if tasting the word. "A concept that binds you to a path of struggle and hope. Yet, destruction is not always senseless. Sometimes, it cleanses to allow new growth." The words, though calm and deliberate, carried a duality that unsettled Naruto. There was neither malice nor warmth in Heles's tone, only an unwavering conviction that spoke of a destiny written in the cosmos. The young ninja's stance shifted subtly. He was alert, every muscle coiled as if ready for a clash that might tip the balance of this strange realm. Without another word, Heles moved. His motion was fluid, almost balletic, as he advanced toward Naruto. The air crackled in his wake, and the residual energy from his presence bent the light in subtle, mesmerizing patterns. For a heartbeat, Naruto's mind raced through every combat scenario he'd ever faced, yet none had felt as disorienting as this. Fighting not against a mere adversary, but against fate incarnate. They met in the center of the square, where the ruins of a once grand monument now lay as broken testimony to a bygone era. Heles's hand extended slowly, as if offering a challenge rather than an embrace, while Naruto mirrored the movement instinctively. Their eyes locked, and in that mutual gaze, an unspoken dialogue unfolded, one of respect, defiance, and an acknowledgement of the other's unique burdens. "Show me your resolve, Naruto Uzumaki," Heles said, his tone neither taunting nor pleading, but an invitation to a deeper contest than mere physical might. Naruto's reply was a low, steady growl of affirmation. "I don't need to show it. I live it. Every day, every fight, my resolve is forged in the heat of every battle." His words, though simple, vibrated with the raw energy of a life lived on the edge of destiny. The tension thickened as the two circled each other, each step measured and laden with unspoken promises of conflict. Around them, the ruined city seemed to pulse with anticipation, the very stones whispering of ancient histories and cosmic futures intertwined. A stray beam of light broke through the murk, slicing the gloom and glinting off Naruto's determined eyes and Heles' inscrutable gaze in equal measure. In a swift, almost imperceptible motion, Heles struck, a demonstration of his formidable ability. The air shimmered as he unleashed a concentrated burst of energy aimed not at Naruto's body, but at the very ground beneath him. The shockwave erupted in a cascade of sparks and fragments, a ballet of destruction that forced Naruto to leap back instinctively. Dust billowed around him, obscuring vision and sound in a moment of chaotic beauty. Naruto landed with the fluidity of one born to battle, rolling across the fractured pavement and rising in one smooth motion. His eyes scanned for any sign of vulnerability, and in the swirling vortex of debris, he caught a glimpse of Heles' confident stance. There was an artistry in his precision, a calculated ferocity that betrayed not cruelty, but a deep-seated understanding of the forces at work. "Your power is formidable," Naruto said, his tone respectful despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "But what is it you truly seek here? Destruction for its own sake, or something more?" Heles' eyes narrowed, the faint glow intensifying as if reflecting an inner storm. "Destruction, creation, they are two sides of the same coin," he replied, his words clipped and measured. "I do not act out of whim. My actions are dictated by a duty to reset, to cleanse. And sometimes that duty collides with yours." Naruto's gaze hardened as he absorbed the implications of Heles' statement. The air vibrated with the resonance of conflicting ideologies, one built on the hope of growth, the other on the necessity of endings. Yet, in that clash, something else stirred, an inexplicable curiosity, a recognition that perhaps, beneath the veneer of duty and destruction, lay shared scars and unspoken truths. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by a rumble that echoed through the ruins, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated in the bones of the shattered city. Both combatants froze, their instincts honed for battle now tuned to a new threat. From the periphery of the square, shadows moved, shapes that defied easy definition, hinting at a presence that neither had expected. Naruto's eyes darted to the shifting forms, his hand tightening on his kunai. "We're not alone," he warned, voice low and cautious. The urgency in his tone betrayed the gravity of the situation. Heles' expression did not change, but his body tensed in response. "Fate weaves a complex tapestry today," he murmured. "It appears we must contend with an enemy that neither of us anticipated." His gaze flickered momentarily toward the encroaching darkness, as if calculating the threat even as he maintained his stance before Naruto. The enemy, an indistinct mass of dark energy, crept forward with silent menace. Its form was fluid, shifting between the outlines of a humanoid figure and something far more abstract, like a living shadow. The entity pulsed with malevolent intent, its presence corrupting the very air around it. Without a word, Naruto and Heles exchanged a brief nod, a tacit agreement that their individual conflicts would momentarily be set aside in the face of a common peril. In unspoken synchronization, they pivoted toward the oncoming threat. Naruto darted to the left, his movements precise and predatory, while Heles advanced in a deliberate, unhurried arc that radiated a calm yet relentless power. The enemy reacted instantly, lashing out with tendrils of dark energy that snaked toward them like vipers. The ensuing clash was a study in contrasts, Naruto's nimble, acrobatic maneuvers interwoven with Heles' measured, devastating strikes. Naruto's kunai flashed as he deflected a tendril that aimed for his throat, each counter-move a testament to his adaptability. "Not bad," he remarked dryly, glancing at Heles as he dodged another surge of energy. "But you'll have to be quicker if you expect me to carry you through this fight." Heles' response was a subtle tilt of his head, his voice calm amid the swirling chaos. "Speed is relative, Naruto. Precision is eternal." His outstretched hand summoned a focused sphere of energy that expanded outward, neutralizing the dark tendrils with an almost surgical grace. The battlefield was a maelstrom of clashing powers and rapid decisions. Each combatant pressed forward, their techniques interlocking in a dance of survival. Amid the cacophony of energy and the rhythmic pounding of their hearts, dialogue became sparse, a series of curt commands, quick assessments, and fleeting moments of shared understanding. In the midst of battle, time compressed into fragments of action and reaction. Naruto vaulted onto a toppled slab of concrete, using it as a springboard to gain a vantage point. From this elevated position, he could better gauge the enemy's approach. "Heles, cover my flank!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the clamor of combat. His tone carried both the urgency of the moment and an implicit trust in his unlikely ally. Without hesitation, Heles shifted his focus. His eyes, still glowing with an eerie intensity, followed Naruto's command as he positioned himself between the enemy's next wave and the young shinobi. "I will," he replied, his words firm and resolute. As he moved, his energy coalesced into a shimmering barrier, a bulwark of divine force that intercepted the dark energy with an explosive burst. The enemy pressed its assault, its form undulating as it sought to overwhelm their combined defenses. Naruto's movements were a blur of calculated strikes and agile dodges, while Heles's measured blows disrupted the oncoming tide with an almost otherworldly precision. In the interplay of offense and defense, the two warriors found themselves locked in a temporary harmony, each covering the other's vulnerabilities as the battle escalated. For every moment of chaos, there was a brief interlude, a pause where their eyes met amid the storm of conflict. In those fleeting instants, a silent conversation unfolded, filled with mutual respect and an undercurrent of something unspoken. It was as if the violence around them had stripped away superficial differences, leaving only the raw essence of their shared struggle. When the enemy's onslaught began to waver, a new sound emerged, a low, resonant hum that vibrated in the bones of the ruined city. The dark entity recoiled as though sensing a power even greater than its own emerging from the very ground. Both Naruto and Heles registered the change in the atmosphere, their senses alert to the possibility of an even deeper threat lurking just beyond sight. Naruto landed beside Heles, his chest heaving as he scanned the horizon. "This isn't over," he said quietly, the conviction in his voice cutting through the tension. "They're drawing us in for something bigger." His eyes flickered with a mixture of adrenaline and a dawning realization that their meeting, this encounter, was not a mere accident. Heles nodded slowly, his expression darkening as he regarded the encroaching shadows. "The threads of fate tighten with each passing moment. We stand at the brink of a reckoning neither of us can ignore." His words were deliberate, each syllable a testament to the cosmic significance of the battle. In the aftermath of the clash, as the enemy's remnants dissolved into the ether, the silence that fell over the square was heavy with portent. The ruined city exhaled a sigh of uneasy calm, and in that fragile quiet, Naruto and Heles found themselves standing together, adversaries turned reluctant allies, bound by circumstances that defied explanation. Naruto's gaze lingered on Heles, studying the enigmatic contours of his face as if searching for a clue to the stranger's true nature. "Why did you come here?" he asked at last, his voice softer now, stripped of the earlier defiance yet imbued with genuine curiosity. "I mean this place. It's not where our worlds should collide." Heles's eyes narrowed slightly, and he regarded the young ninja with a measured calm. "There is a convergence of forces that transcends our individual choices," he replied slowly. "I did not choose to be here, just as you did not choose your path. Yet, here we stand, at the nexus of two destinies." Their conversation unfolded against the backdrop of a city caught between decay and rebirth, each word laden with the weight of possibilities. The air still pulsed with residual energy, a reminder of the battle's ferocity and the promise of further conflict. In that charged moment, neither warrior could ignore the subtle shifts in their perceptions. Each had glimpsed something in the other that resonated on a deeply personal level. Naruto's tone shifted as he pressed for clarity. "What do you mean by destiny? Is it fate that led you to this moment, or is it something you chose, even if reluctantly?" Heles's gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the fractured skyline merged with the uncertain light of the world beyond. "I follow a duty set upon me by forces older than either of our realms," he explained. "It is not a choice, but a mandate, and yet, in that mandate, there is a sliver of freedom, a decision to embrace the consequences of every action." His words, though measured, hinted at inner turmoil and a longing for something beyond the confines of cosmic duty. The dialogue between them became a delicate dance, a juxtaposition of conflicting philosophies and hidden vulnerabilities. Naruto's own experiences, marked by loss and the relentless pursuit of acceptance, resonated in the spaces between Heles' carefully chosen phrases. I've fought to protect the people who believed in me, even when they couldn't see what I was capable of, Naruto said, his voice low and earnest. Every battle, every scar, they remind me why I fight. Not just for duty, but for the chance to change what was thought unchangeable. Heles' expression softened imperceptibly, the hardened lines around his eyes betraying a hint of sorrow. Change is both the seed of hope and the harbinger of ruin, he murmured. In every ending, there lies the potential for rebirth, if one has the courage to seize it. His tone was devoid of sentimentality, yet the underlying emotion was palpable, a yearning to reconcile his role as a force of destruction with the possibility of something more humane. A distant rumble shattered the introspection, drawing their attention back to the present. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and an almost imperceptible shift in the atmosphere signaled that their confrontation with destiny was far from over. Shadows danced along the edges of the square, and the very air seemed to murmur warnings of a storm gathering on the horizon. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he scanned the periphery. That wasn't part of our plan, he observed, his tone clipped as he steadied himself for whatever came next. Someone, or something, is orchestrating this, and we're caught in the middle. Heles' reply was measured, his gaze fixed on the darkening silhouettes. It appears our encounter is merely the prelude to a greater challenge, he said. A trial that will test not only our abilities but our resolve to bridge these divided worlds. In that charged moment, the ruined square became a crucible for both conflict and unexpected connection. The tension that had built between them, through collision, confrontation, and reluctant cooperation, now wove a fragile thread of alliance. As the distant hum of approaching forces grew louder, each fighter steeled himself for the coming battle. Naruto's stance shifted from one of guarded inquiry to resolute determination. We can't let fear dictate our actions, he declared, his voice carrying the fervor of one who had overcome insurmountable odds before. I won't let whatever comes next tear apart what little hope we have left. His eyes met Heles', and for a moment, the unspoken understanding between them deepened. Despite their differences, one a beacon of unwavering hope, the other an embodiment of inexorable duty, they recognized in each other a shared willingness to confront the darkness. Heles' features hardened as he prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Then let us face it together, he said, the gravity of his words underscored by the steady cadence of his speech. For in unity, even the most disparate forces can forge a path through chaos. His voice carried a quiet authority, an invitation to transcend the limitations imposed by their divergent origins. The enemy's presence loomed ever closer, and the ruined city bristled with anticipation. With a final glance toward the disintegrating horizon, Naruto and Heles took their positions, the silence between them pregnant with the promise of what was to come. Each breath they drew was a defiant stand against the encroaching void, a testament to the power of conviction and the possibility of redemption, even in the heart of destruction. As the dark shadows began to coalesce into more defined shapes, the clash between cosmic forces and mortal resolve stirred anew. The trembling of the ground, the murmur of distant energies, and the fierce determination in their eyes all pointed to an inevitable convergence. In that charged atmosphere, the unlikely encounter between Naruto and Heles became the fulcrum upon which the future would pivot, an unsteady balance between creation and annihilation, hope and despair. Their eyes locked once more, and in that shared gaze lay a silent promise, a vow to face whatever trials lay ahead with unyielding courage. The meeting of these two souls, drawn together by fate and necessity, signified more than the merging of disparate worlds. It was the beginning of a partnership that would redefine the very nature of power and responsibility, challenging the boundaries of duty and desire. As the enemy's presence grew unmistakable at the periphery of the crumbling square, Naruto's mind raced with possibilities. His voice, low and resolute, broke the tense silence. Whatever comes next, he said, we stand together. I've learned that sometimes the greatest strength lies in the bonds we form, even with those we never expected to call allies. Heles' reply was firm and imbued with a quiet intensity. In the midst of oblivion, unity is the beacon that defies the darkness. Our fates are intertwined, and only by embracing that can we hope to reshape our worlds. His tone was not a concession to sentiment, but a recognition of an unspoken truth that had taken root in the midst of chaos. The ground trembled with renewed force, and from the encroaching gloom emerged a host of unknown adversaries, shapes forged of shadow and malice, their intentions as inscrutable as the void that birthed them. The air thickened with the promise of further conflict, every moment a delicate prelude to the next onslaught. In the face of such overwhelming uncertainty, Naruto and Heles braced themselves for a battle that would test not only their physical prowess but the very convictions that defined them. As the first of the shadowy figures lunged from the darkness, the two warriors moved as one, each strike, each parry, and every calculated maneuver melding into a seamless rhythm of survival. The collision of their disparate energies produced sparks that illuminated the ruins in fleeting bursts of brilliance, each flash a reminder that even in the heart of despair, there existed a fierce, unquenchable will to endure. In the midst of the tumult, Naruto's voice cut through with crisp clarity. "Heles, now!" he called, as he spun to deflect an attack that threatened to engulf them both. His tone was devoid of hesitation, driven by an instinctual need to protect not just his own life, but the fragile alliance that had formed in the crucible of this unlikely encounter. Heles responded without missing a beat. With a measured, almost poetic sweep of his arm, he unleashed a controlled burst of energy that scattered the shadowy assailants like leaves before a storm. "Stand firm," he intoned, his voice resonating with an authority that transcended the battlefield. "Our struggle is only beginning." In that charged interlude, amid the clamor of clashing forces and the whisper of destiny's call, the ruined square bore witness to a transformation, a merging of resolve and purpose that defied the inherent chaos of their surroundings. The encounter, both violent and unexpectedly profound, left an indelible mark on both Naruto and Heles. They had glimpsed something in each other that went beyond the superficial labels of hero and harbinger, a shared vulnerability that hinted at the possibility of redemption and renewal. When the immediate threat finally receded, and the echoes of battle subsided into a tense, expectant quiet, the two warriors found themselves standing together amid the rubble, a fragile island of certainty in a sea of unknowns. The air, still charged with residual energy, seemed to hold its breath as they regarded one another with a mixture of wary respect and an emerging sense of camaraderie. Naruto's gaze softened ever so slightly as he broke the silence. "I never thought I'd find common ground with someone who embodies destruction," he admitted, his words measured and reflective. "But maybe there's more to this than meets the eye." Heles's eyes flickered with a momentary vulnerability before hardening once again. "Common ground is not found by chance," he replied. "It is carved out in the crucible of adversity. Today, we have forged a bond out of necessity, and perhaps out of something deeper." His words carried neither hope nor despair, merely a sober acknowledgement of the complexity of their meeting. As the darkened horizon hinted at further challenges beyond the immediate skirmish, the ruined square exuded an air of somber anticipation. Every shattered window, every twisted beam, whispered of a future fraught with uncertainty, a future that would demand not only strength but the courage to trust in the unlikeliest of allies. Naruto shifted his weight, his gaze drifting toward the place where the enemy had receded into the shadows. "What do you suppose awaits us next?" he asked, voice low enough that only Heles could hear. The question was less about strategy and more an invitation, a plea for clarity in a moment of unbridled chaos. Heles's response was measured, thoughtful. "Our paths converge at a point where destiny is rewritten with every breath. I sense that what lies ahead is not merely another battle, but a crucible that will test the limits of our resolve. There is a power at work here, a force that draws all of us together, regardless of our origins." His tone carried a quiet certainty, as if he had seen the threads of fate intertwine long before this encounter. In that charged pause, as the wind whispered through the skeletal remains of the city, Naruto felt the weight of his own journey pressing upon him. The battles he had fought, the sacrifices he had made, all of it seemed to culminate in this single, pivotal moment. And as he regarded Heles, the embodiment of cosmic duty and destructive grace, he recognized that this unlikely meeting was not an aberration, but a necessary step toward a destiny either could yet fully comprehend. The distant hum of approaching forces, the interplay of light and shadow, and the palpable tension in the air all spoke of a coming storm, one that would demand every ounce of strength, every shred of resolve they possessed. In that moment, with the ruins as their silent witness and fate as their constant companion, Naruto and Heles braced themselves for the next chapter in their intertwined saga. The ground trembled once more as a low, resonant sound began to build from the depths of the darkness, a sound that carried with it the promise of chaos and transformation. Both warriors exchanged a final, determined glance, the silent communication between them speaking louder than any words ever could. The alliance they had forged in the heat of conflict was fragile, but it was enough to kindle a spark of hope in the midst of despair. As the first tendrils of the unknown enemy crept from the shadows to reclaim the space they had just fought for, Naruto tightened his grip on his weapon. "I don't know what fate has in store for us," he murmured, each word measured and deliberate. "But I do know this, we face it together." Heles' response was a quiet vow, his voice imbued with the solemn gravity of his duty. "Then let the reckoning begin," he declared, stepping forward to meet the encroaching darkness with the unwavering resolve of one who has long accepted the necessity of endings, even as he dared to hope for a new beginning. In that charged, uncertain moment, the ruined square became more than a battlefield. It transformed into a threshold between what had been and what was yet to come. The encounter, as unlikely as it was profound, left behind an indelible impression on both Naruto and Heles, a mark that would shape the course of their journeys in ways either could foresee. As the enemy surged once more from the shadows, and the first blows of the next onslaught began to ring out, the tension in the air shifted subtly. The promise of future conflict, laced with the potential for deeper revelations, hung like a storm cloud overhead. In the final moments before the next chapter of their intertwined fates would unfold, the two warriors stood side by side, a testament to the resilience of hope in the face of inexorable destruction, and a silent promise that whatever came next, they would meet it as one. The sky was a bruised tapestry of twilight and lingering storm clouds as Naruto walked along a cracked, forgotten trail on the outskirts of a ruined village. The wind carried scraps of memories, whispers of laughter, shouts of anger, echoes of ancient grief, and each step stirred a hidden sediment of regret and hope. Here, in the stillness between chaos and calm, his mind wandered unbidden back to the darker corridors of his youth. Naruto's eyes, the same vivid blue that belied his inner tempest, tracked the uneven ground as if each stone might speak a secret. The ruins around him, scarred by battles and time, mirrored the fractures within himself. He paused beside a stagnant puddle, its surface disturbed only by a slow, deliberate ripple. Staring into the distorted reflection of his own face, he recalled the day he first learned that destiny could be as cruel as it was relentless. In a small clearing within the Hidden Leaf village, a younger Naruto, barely a teenager, sat cross-legged under a sprawling oak, its gnarled branches bending in the wind like the burden of his own solitude. He had been an outcast even then, his loud laughter and desperate need for recognition setting him apart from a society that valued discipline over passion. His mentor, Iruka, had sat with him on that very day, his voice low and measured as he addressed the boy's wounded pride. "Naruto, the world doesn't always see the spark within you," Iruka had said, his tone neither dismissive nor condescending but filled with a careful empathy. "It takes time for people to understand the light you carry, even if it seems to flare uncontrollably at first." The memory was neither comforting nor conclusive. It carried the weight of every unspoken word, each silent apology, and the scars of battles fought both outside and within. Naruto had listened, his gaze fixed on the swirling dust at his feet, and though his heart had roared with defiance, it had also absorbed the lesson in a way that time alone could not erase. Back in the present, Naruto's thoughts swirled like the wind around him. He recalled the isolation he had endured, the bitter rejection that stung more sharply than any physical blow. His voice, roughened by years of unspoken sorrow, murmured into the dusk. "They never saw me, never saw who I could be." The words were meant for no one, yet the silence around him seemed to echo them back, amplifying his solitude. Across the shattered landscape of memory and reality, another figure wrestled with his own ghosts. In a desolate temple half swallowed by nature's reclaiming embrace, Heles stood before an ancient mural depicting cosmic cycles, creation and destruction intertwined in a dance of inevitability. His presence was as commanding as it was conflicted, the divine aura of a god of destruction tempered by the unmistakable hue of regret. Even now, centuries into his role, Heles found no comfort in the certainty of his destiny. Heles's eyes, like twin nebulae burning with ancient sorrow, shifted over the faded frescoes. Every brushstroke of celestial artistry reminded him of the first time he had tasted the bitter tang of responsibility. In the temple's silence, his mind drifted back to an era long past, a time when he was not yet shackled by the mantle of annihilation, when existence and non-existence had been possibilities rather than certainties. A memory unfurled like the delicate petals of a cosmic flower. He recalled the council of deities, their voices resonant and cold as starlight, discussing the balance of power and the inevitability of decay. Destruction is not cruelty, it is nature's truth, one ancient deity had intoned, his tone as unyielding as the void. Yet, Heles remembered the quiver in his own voice when he had once questioned the necessity of endless devastation. The recollection of his silent defiance, a single spark of doubt in an infinite night, sent a tremor through his immortal soul. In the quiet moments that followed, the temple and the ruined village, separated by worlds and destinies, shared a common language, memories that both healed and haunted. As the night deepened, Naruto found himself shifting his weight from one foot to the other, his mind oscillating between regret and a fragile, almost imperceptible hope. He recalled the times he had fought, not just against enemies, but against the oppressive shadow of his past. Each fight, each scar earned in battle, had been a silent rebuke to the forces that had once sought to confine him. In one such memory, the air was thick with dust and desperation. Naruto had been locked in combat with a figure whose eyes burned with the cold fire of disdain. The clash of fists and fervor had echoed through the narrow streets, punctuated by the bitter taste of loss and the fleeting promise of redemption. "I won't let you define me," he had roared, his voice cracking with the force of unspent determination. The enemy's sneer had been met with a retaliatory flurry of strikes, a dance of survival where every move mattered, every breath a declaration of self-worth. Now, standing alone amidst the ruins of his past, Naruto's thoughts shifted to the faces of those who had doubted him. The ridicule, the isolation, the countless nights spent searching for a place to belong, they had all coalesced into a tapestry of sorrow and resilience. He knew that his journey was far from over, that the scars etched into his soul were not marks of defeat but testaments to the battles he had survived. And yet, the ghost of loneliness lingered, a silent reminder that healing required more than victory. It required understanding. Meanwhile, in the temple where the weight of cosmic duty pressed down like the relentless pull of gravity, Heles allowed himself a rare moment of vulnerability. He paced slowly before the mural, his heavy footsteps resonating in the empty hall. The images of celestial beings, caught in the eternal cycle of creation and destruction, seemed to mirror his own inner turmoil. "Is there redemption in oblivion?" he murmured to the silent stone, the question hanging in the stagnant air like a fragile thread. A distant memory surfaced with unbidden clarity, a time when the cosmos had not yet demanded total surrender to fate. He recalled an encounter with a fellow deity, a being of paradoxical warmth in a realm defined by detachment. In a private conversation away from the prying eyes of the divine assembly, his companion had spoken softly of hope and possibility. "Destruction births creation," she had whispered, her voice a tender contradiction to the cold logic of their world. "Even in the end there is a spark, a chance to rebuild, to find meaning in the ashes." That spark had ignited something within Heles, a flicker of rebellion against the predetermined role he was forced to play. But as the years cascaded into centuries, the spark had dimmed under the weight of relentless duty. Still, every so often, in the solitude of ancient temples or the silent moments between cataclysmic events, Heles would dare to wonder if there was a path not yet trodden, a road that might lead to a semblance of peace. The memory of that conversation, like a forbidden melody, coaxed a tremor of defiance from his core. "Must I forever be the harbinger of ruin?" he asked the empty hall, his voice both a plea and a challenge. The silence that answered was as profound as the void between stars, leaving him with only the echo of his own uncertainty. As the night deepened, the boundaries between past and present blurred. Naruto's footsteps led him to a broken bridge spanning a dried-up stream, its wooden planks warped by time and neglect. He paused, leaning on the splintered railing, and allowed his mind to wander back to a moment of profound loss. A time when the only sound that filled his ears was the relentless beat of his own heart. He remembered the day when a trusted friend had fallen in battle, a friend whose life had shone brightly and then been extinguished by the merciless currents of fate. The memory was vivid, the glare of sunlight on shattered glass, the metallic tang of blood in the air, the raw, unfiltered despair that had seeped into every corner of his being. "I won't let this define me," he had vowed then, even as tears mingled with sweat and pain. The promise had driven him onward, a silent oath to rise above the circumstances that threatened to consume him. Standing on the bridge, Naruto's voice broke the silence, low and resolute. "I carry every scar as a reminder of what I've overcome. But I won't let them chain me to a past that refuses to die." His words, though soft, resonated with the power of hard-won truth. Each syllable was a deliberate act of defiance against the ghosts that clung to him, a quiet declaration that the future was his to command, however uncertain it might be. Elsewhere, the temple's corridors echoed with the measured steps of Heles as he moved from one hall to another. The marble floors, worn smooth by the passage of countless deities, bore silent witness to his inner conflict. At a secluded alcove, he knelt before a crumbling inscription that spoke of balance and inevitability. His gloved hand traced the faded symbols, each stroke a connection to a past he both cherished and despised. In the dim light, Heles's thoughts took on the cadence of a half-remembered prayer. "Every end must birth a beginning," he intoned softly, the words a mantra against the void that threatened to engulf him. Yet beneath the measured rhythm lay an undercurrent of rebellion, a refusal to accept the predetermined script of his existence. He recalled the moments when he had fought not for the sake of duty, but for the sheer impulse to change the course of events. Those were the rare instances when the god of destruction had dared to dream of something beyond mere obliteration. A memory surfaced of a time when Heles had clashed with an entity whose very presence defied the natural order. The battle had been fierce, a collision of wills and energies that left the cosmos trembling in its wake. In the midst of the tumult, he had heard a voice not his own, a whisper of possibility that spoke of redemption even in the heart of devastation. "You are more than the sum of your burdens," the voice had declared, firm and unyielding. It was a challenge to accept the mantle of ruin without question, a subtle reminder that within every act of destruction lay the seeds of creation. The recollection stirred something deep within him, a spark that flickered in defiance of the darkness. As he rose from his kneeling position, Heles's eyes narrowed with a quiet resolve. The temple, the cosmos, even the relentless pull of his destiny, all seemed to converge in that moment of introspection. "I will not be defined solely by the end I bring," he whispered, his tone resolute and measured. "There must be room for something else, something worth fighting for." The night wore on, and in the spaces between memory and reality, both warriors wrestled with the ghosts of their pasts. Naruto, still perched on the broken bridge, recalled fragments of conversations with those who had once doubted him. A memory of a bitter exchange with an elder, whose words had cut deeper than any physical wound, flashed before his eyes. "You're nothing but a reckless child," the elder had sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Your so-called passion will lead you to ruin." Yet Naruto had responded not with anger, but with a defiant calm, the weight of his own convictions steadying him. "I will forge my own destiny," he had replied, each word a brick in the foundation of his resolve. The memory mingled with the sound of a distant storm, the patter of rain echoing off the cracked stones of the village. Each drop, a reminder of tears once shed in silence, now fell like tiny catalysts for change. The rhythmic cadence of rain against stone and wood wove into the fabric of Naruto's thoughts, binding him to a past that was both a burden and a source of strength. His heart beat with the quiet thunder of a promise, an oath to honor the past by forging a future free of its oppressive weight. At the same time, Heles traversed the ancient corridors of the temple, his pace unhurried but determined. In a secluded chamber, he discovered a solitary window overlooking a barren landscape, a vista that stretched into the infinite void of space. The sight was both humbling and awe-inspiring, a reminder that even gods were small against the vast tapestry of existence. Here, in the twilight of a forgotten age, he allowed himself a moment of vulnerability. "What is the measure of my duty if it steals the very essence of who I am?" he murmured, his words barely audible over the whisper of the cosmic winds. A sudden creak from the chamber's ancient door startled him, and he turned sharply to see a figure silhouetted against the faint light. The visitor, draped in robes that hinted at a forgotten order, spoke in a voice that carried the weight of both admonition and compassion. You bear your burdens with a dignity few can fathom, Heles, yet even gods must sometimes confront the truths they fear. The figure's words, measured and deliberate, held an unexpected warmth, a reminder that even in realms where fate reigned supreme, there were allies who understood the loneliness of divine responsibility. Heles regarded the visitor with a mixture of wariness and relief. And who are you to question the edicts of our existence? He replied, his tone cool but laced with an undercurrent of curiosity. The visitor's eyes, luminous with an inner light, met his with unwavering sincerity. I am a keeper of memories, a witness to the cycles of birth and decay. I come not to challenge your path, but to remind you that even in the darkest hours, there is a possibility for change. The dialogue hung between them like a fragile bridge spanning the abyss of time and duty, a bridge that promised the chance to reconcile past wounds with the potential for redemption. Heles's mind raced with conflicting emotions. The visitor's words, though cryptic, stirred a dormant longing for a different fate, a life not solely defined by destruction. In that brief exchange, the temple's ancient stones bore silent witness to the birth of a fragile hope, one that might one day bridge the gulf between duty and desire. Back on the broken bridge, Naruto's solitude was interrupted by the soft crunch of gravel behind him. He turned to see an old wanderer, a traveler whose face was etched with years of hardship and wisdom. The wanderer's eyes, dark and knowing, regarded Naruto with a measured gaze. You carry burdens that would crush a lesser soul, the stranger observed, his voice low and resonant with experience. But sometimes the weight of the past can forge the strength to shape a better future. Naruto's lips pressed into a thin line as he regarded the wanderer. I've learned that every scar is a lesson, every wound a story, he replied, his voice steady despite the tremor of unspoken pain. The stranger nodded, his gaze drifting toward the horizon where the last light of day battled the encroaching darkness. There is power in remembrance, in understanding where you've come from. Yet, never forget, what defines you is not the shadows behind, but the light you carry forward. The words resonated deep within Naruto, affirming the silent oath he had made to himself in countless lonely nights. The exchange, brief as it was, left Naruto with a renewed sense of purpose. The wanderer's parting words, uttered with the gravity of one who had seen worlds rise and fall, lingered like a promise of guidance. Remember, the past is not a chain, but a map. Use it wisely, and it will lead you to a future you never imagined. With that, the stranger melted back into the twilight, leaving Naruto alone with the murmuring echoes of his own determination. In the quiet recesses of the temple, Heles found himself unable to shake the visitor's words from his mind. As he resumed his solitary journey through the ancient corridors, each step resonated with the cadence of a reluctant acceptance. He recalled the image of the barren landscape beyond the window, a reminder that even in a void, there existed the raw materials for creation. The memory fueled a simmering debate within him, one where the certainty of duty clashed with the yearning for something beyond the prescribed role of annihilation. In the solitude of a hidden courtyard, overgrown with vines that had claimed the stones long ago, Heles sank onto a cold bench. The night was a mosaic of silence and distant, unidentifiable sounds, a symphony of the universe in repose. His thoughts drifted back to the council of deities, to the moment when he had dared to question the natural order. The memory was stark, stripped of embellishment, a raw confrontation with fate. He recalled his own words from that long-ago day, words that had challenged the established dogma. I am more than the end. I am the seed of something unforeseen. Those words had hung in the air like fragile promises, each syllable a rebellious act against the inevitability of destruction. A sudden gust stirred the vines, and Heles's gaze lifted to the star-scattered sky. In that vast expanse, he searched for meaning, a sign that the cycles of creation and destruction could yield a path uncharted. The cosmos, indifferent yet inscrutable, offered no direct answers, only the silent reassurance of endless possibility. There is still a chance to rebuild, he murmured, as much to the stars as to himself. A chance to find a purpose beyond the void. His voice, though soft, carried the weight of a destiny unbound by tradition, a defiant hope that clashed with the certainty of his role. As midnight approached, the twin threads of memory and longing wound tighter around both Naruto and Heles, each battling the specters of their past in isolation yet destined to converge in the crucible of fate. Naruto's mind teemed with recollections, faces, voices, and moments that had shaped him into a warrior of both resilience and tenderness. He recalled the laughter of comrades now lost, the biting retort of a mentor whose wisdom had carved a path through despair, and the quiet moments when he had dared to dream of acceptance. These memories, raw and unfiltered, mingled with the present like overlapping echoes of a life lived at the edge of both brilliance and sorrow. In the quiet of his heart, Naruto felt a stirring, a subtle, persistent whisper that urged him to see beyond the boundaries of his own pain. "I must find the strength to embrace all of it," he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible over the night's murmurs. The resolve in his tone was unmistakable. Each scar, each bitter memory, was a stepping stone toward a future that promised not just survival, but the chance to redefine himself. Meanwhile, Heles remained in the ancient courtyard, the visitor's words reverberating in his mind as a challenge to the relentless cadence of fate. He recalled the face of the Keeper of Memories, an enigmatic figure who had seen the rise and fall of empires, who had borne witness to the cycles of cosmic birth and decay. The memory of that encounter, with its unspoken promise of transformation, filled Heles with a quiet determination. "Perhaps there is more to my existence than endless destruction," he admitted silently, the words of rebellion against the chains of destiny. "Perhaps, in the shadows of my past, I might uncover a sliver of light that leads to redemption." The temple's corridors now seemed to hum with the possibilities of change. Every stone, every worn inscription, whispered of secrets hidden in plain sight, of the power that lay dormant in moments of introspection and silent defiance. Heles rose from the bench with deliberate care, his mind alight with the realization that the journey ahead was as much about reconciling with his past as it was about forging a new path forward. In a rare convergence of fate, the night's silence seemed to bind the distant souls of Naruto and Heles. Though separated by worlds and the weight of their respective destinies, the shadows of their pasts danced in tandem, a silent prelude to the inevitable meeting that would reshape both their lives. As Naruto stepped away from the ruined bridge and began his solitary walk back toward a settlement still grappling with the remnants of conflict, he could not shake the sense that his memories were not mere burdens but beacons guiding him through the darkness. He recalled a conversation from his early days in the village, a terse exchange with a fellow fighter who had once challenged his right to dream. "You're nothing but a flash in the dark," the other had sneered, dismissing the flame of hope that Naruto carried with him. Yet, in that moment of derision, Naruto had clutched his resolve tighter. "Even the smallest spark can ignite a revolution," he had countered, his words firm and unyielding. That defiant promise had become a cornerstone of his identity, a reminder that the light of hope was always worth preserving, even when the world seemed determined to snuff it out. Every step Naruto took on the uneven path was a testament to his perseverance. The night air, cool and laced with the scent of rain-soaked earth, carried whispers of past struggles and future triumphs. With each measured stride, he drew upon the reservoir of memories, each loss, each victory, each quiet moment of understanding, to forge a path towards something greater than the sum of his scars. At the break of a new, uncertain dawn, both men found themselves on the precipice of change. In the dim light of early morning, as the sky shifted from bruised purples to tentative grays, Naruto paused atop a rocky outcrop overlooking a valley that lay shrouded in mist. His breath came in quiet, deliberate measures, and in that stillness, the ghosts of his past gathered like silent sentinels. The valley below, with its tangled forests and crumbling structures, seemed to embody the contradictions of his life, beauty entwined with decay, hope nestled among despair. Naruto closed his eyes, recalling the words of Iruka and the myriad voices that had shaped him over the years. His heart, battered yet resilient, throbbed with the echo of every challenge he had met head-on. "I will honor the past by building something that endures," he vowed silently, the promise etched into the lines of his face like an indelible map. Even as the valley slumbered in the hazy light of dawn, his determination blazed bright, a beacon against the encroaching darkness of regret. Half a world away, within the ancient walls of the temple, Heles lingered in the fading glow of the celestial window. The remnants of twilight bled into the first hints of a cosmic dawn, and in that transitional light, he surveyed the barren expanse beyond. The emptiness of space, speckled with distant fires and the silent vigil of countless stars, reminded him that creation and destruction were twin threads woven into the fabric of existence. Maybe it is time, he thought, voice barely a whisper in the stillness, to let the echoes of the past guide the emergence of a future unbound by fate. His reflection in the glassy surface of a forgotten basin, an artifact of a bygone era, showed not a god of destruction, but a being capable of introspection and, perhaps, change. The dichotomy of his existence pressed against him like the gravity of a dying star, and yet, in that moment, Heles allowed himself a tentative hope. There was a possibility that the scars of his past, the burdens he had carried for eons, might someday become the foundation for a transformation beyond even the realm of gods. As the morning matured into a day edged with uncertainty and promise, both Naruto and Heles began to sense the stirring of destiny, a subtle shift that hinted at the convergence of their disparate paths. Naruto's pace quickened as he descended from the outcrop, the weight of his memories propelling him forward with a renewed sense of urgency. Every step was punctuated by the silent affirmation of his resolve that the past, with all its jagged edges and bittersweet lessons, would not dictate the future he dared to imagine. In the temple's hushed corridors, Heles gathered the fragments of his resolve like scattered stardust. The keeper of memories' words reverberated in his mind, and with each measured step, he prepared to embrace the challenges that lay ahead. His path was as uncertain as it was inevitable, a journey marked by the interplay of light and shadow, creation and destruction. Yet within that uncertainty lay the promise of something new, a future that might yet be sculpted from the raw material of experience. The ancient stones of the temple and the weathered bricks of the ruined village both whispered of change. They bore silent testimony to the cycles of life and death, to the inescapable truth that every end birthed a beginning. And as Naruto and Heles moved inexorably closer to the crossroads of fate, the shadows of their pasts wove a tapestry of tension and possibility, a fragile bridge connecting what was with what might be. In the final moments before the inevitable collision of destinies, a subtle shift in the air heralded the approach of something greater. For Naruto, it was the distant rumble of approaching conflict, a low, resonant sound that stirred the embers of battle within him. His senses, honed by years of surviving both the harsh truths of the past and the unpredictable perils of the present, sharpened as the sound grew louder, mingling with the murmur of his own heartbeat. Every instinct in his body screamed that change was near, that the legacy of his past was about to collide with the uncertain promise of the future. Across the threshold of the ancient temple, Heles felt a similar stirring. The air vibrated with a subtle yet undeniable energy, a prelude to a confrontation that would test the boundaries of destiny itself. The very stones of the temple seemed to hum with anticipation, as if they, too, recognized that the moment of reckoning was upon them. The past shapes us, but it does not confine us, Heles repeated softly, his voice echoing against the cavernous walls. His words, both a benediction and a challenge, carried the weight of countless lifetimes and the promise of transformation yet unrealized. For both men, the memories that had haunted them, each heartbreak, every loss, every moment of defiant courage, melded into a reservoir of strength. They carried those scars not as chains, but as symbols of resilience, reminders of the battles that had forged them into beings capable of defying the odds. And as the distant sounds of approaching turmoil swelled into a crescendo, each felt the inexorable pull of destiny drawing them toward an encounter that would reshape their very existence. In that charged moment of transition, the night relinquished its hold on the world, giving way to a dawn that promised both renewal and relentless challenge. The shadows of the past, though ever present, now served as a prelude to something far greater, a convergence of souls bound by the weight of their experiences and the unyielding desire to carve a future beyond the dictates of fate. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he recalled the faces of those who had doubted him, their sneers and scorn now transformed into distant echoes against the rising light. "I will not be defined by what they said," he whispered, determination resonating in every syllable. "I will redefine my destiny with every step I take." His voice, rough yet resolute, carried the silent promise of a warrior who had weathered countless storms, each one leaving him stronger, more determined to forge a path that was uniquely his own. At the same time, Heles stepped away from the sanctuary of the temple, his heart pulsing with the defiant hope that had long lain buried beneath centuries of duty. The cosmos beckoned, its infinite expanse promising both peril and possibility, and with a measured stride he embraced the uncertainty of the coming conflict. "There is a time to destroy," he murmured, his words imbued with a newfound resolve. "But there is also a time to create, to reclaim what has been lost." The declaration, simple and unadorned, echoed in the silent corridors of his mind, forging a connection between the scars of the past and the hope of a future reborn. As the first rays of daylight bathed the ruined village and the ancient temple in a golden haze, the tension in the air grew palpable. It was a moment suspended between the echoes of what had been and the promise of what might yet be, a fragile equilibrium on the edge of upheaval. The remnants of past battles and the weight of ancient duty converged into a single point of clarity, a silent understanding that change was not only inevitable but necessary for the rebirth of both worlds. Naruto's gaze fixed on the horizon, where the rising sun painted the sky with hues of fire and promise. Every breath he drew was a testament to his relentless spirit, every step a defiant march toward a destiny unbound by the weight of past failures. In the quiet determination of his expression lay the unspoken vow that he would honor the lessons of his past by forging a future that embraced both pain and possibility. In the temple, Heles' eyes glinted with a rare mixture of sorrow and resolve. He turned away from the window and faced the deep shadows of the corridor, each step resonating with the cadence of a soul determined to break free from the chains of expectation. The memories of his long-forgotten defiance mingled with the stirring of hope as he prepared to meet the coming storm. A storm that promised to test the very limits of his existence. In the waning moments of that pivotal day, as destiny readied itself to interlace the lives of these two warriors, a subtle, almost imperceptible signal rippled through the fabric of reality. The wind shifted, the distant rumble of conflict sharpened, and in the space between heartbeat and breath, both Naruto and Heles sensed the approach of an event that would forever alter the trajectory of their intertwined fates. Naruto's heart pounded with a quiet intensity as he descended further into the valley, his mind a whirlwind of recollections and unspoken promises. Every scar, every memory, every defiant word spoken in the face of rejection coalesced into a single, unwavering resolve. He clenched his fists, feeling the rough texture of calloused skin, a living reminder of the battles fought, the pain endured, and the hope that had never been fully extinguished. "The past will guide me," he murmured, the words both an affirmation and a challenge to the darkness that threatened to reclaim him. Meanwhile, in the ancient sanctuary of the temple, Heles drew a steady breath, his mind crystallizing the paradox that had defined his existence for so long. The weight of his destiny, the ceaseless cycle of destruction that had once seemed an unalterable decree, now wavered in the face of a nascent possibility, a future where even a god of destruction might choose a different path. "I have carried these burdens for too long," he declared to the silent halls, his voice resolute. "It is time to reclaim the fragments of my soul and piece together a future that honors the light as much as the dark." The tension in the air grew into a palpable energy, a silent prelude to the collision of worlds that lay on the horizon. As Naruto and Heles moved toward the unknown, the shadows of their past clung to them like specters, whispering of sorrow and sacrifice, of battles won and hearts broken. Yet, within those very shadows lay the seeds of transformation, a promise that the scars of yesterday could one day become the foundation for a brighter tomorrow. And so, as the day unfolded with the quiet inevitability of destiny, the stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of both men, an encounter that promised not only to redefine their own identities but to reshape the very fabric of the worlds they inhabited. The memories of rejection, loss, and silent defiance, interwoven with moments of tender hope and quiet resilience, would serve as the undercurrent for a battle that was as much about inner transformation as it was about the clash of cosmic forces. In that fragile twilight between what had been and what was yet to come, the echoes of the past sang a haunting melody, a refrain of pain and promise, of endings that birthed beginnings. And as Naruto and Heles advanced toward the looming uncertainties of fate, each carried within them the indelible marks of their histories, the scars that testified to a life forged in the crucible of adversity. Their hearts, though heavy with memories, beat with the relentless rhythm of hope, a hope that, even in the darkest of nights, the promise of dawn was never truly lost. With the rising sun illuminating the remnants of old wounds and new aspirations alike, both men stood at the threshold of a future that demanded sacrifice and courage. In the distance, the murmur of an approaching conflict grew louder, a signal that the fragile equilibrium between memory and destiny was about to be shattered. The silent promise of change, carried on the wind and etched into every stone and scar, beckoned them forward into the unknown. Naruto's eyes burned with a quiet ferocity as he set his course toward that distant call, a call that promised not only the chance to reconcile with his own past but also the possibility of forging alliances that could redefine the future. "I will not be bound by the ghosts that haunt me," he vowed to the empty expanse before him, his voice firm and resolute. "I will turn every loss into a lesson, every wound into a mark of strength." At the same time, Heles' steps grew more purposeful as he left the sanctuary of the temple and embraced the uncertainty of the world beyond. His gaze fixed on the horizon where the first signs of impending turmoil shimmered like mirages, carried the weight of centuries, and the defiant hope of one who dared to rewrite his destiny. "In the ruins of the past, I will find the spark to ignite a new beginning," he murmured, each word a promise to himself and to the universe. As the day advanced and the subtle tension swelled into an unspoken promise of conflict, the ancient echoes of both Naruto's and Heles' journeys whispered of challenges yet to come. The memories that had haunted them, the battles that had defined them, and the unyielding determination that had carried them through countless trials all converged in that singular moment, a moment pregnant with the potential for transformation, redemption, and a future written not in the ink of destiny but in the sweat and courage of those who dared to dream. In the charged silence of that morning, with the world holding its breath between the remnants of what was and the uncertain promise of what might be, the shadows of the past receded into the background, transforming from chains of regret into the very foundation of a new, unwritten story. And as Naruto and Heles moved inexorably toward the coming storm, each step resonated with the quiet, determined refrain of those who have faced the darkness and emerged, scarred but unbowed, ready to forge a path toward a destiny of their own making. The stage was set, and the next chapter of their intertwined fates loomed on the horizon, a chapter shrouded in mystery and fraught with danger, yet brimming with the promise of transformation. The past, with all its jagged edges and silent truths, had given them the strength to stand on the precipice of a new era. And now, with the tension of unsaid words and unseen battles coiling in the air like a drawn bowstring, both Naruto and Heles braced themselves for the collision of worlds, a collision that would test the very limits of their resolve, challenge the boundaries of their pain, and ultimately, redefine the essence of who they were. In the final moments before the turning of the page, as the first hints of an impending storm rustled the leaves and stirred the dust of long-forgotten battlefields, a singular thought crystallized in each of their hearts, a thought that transcended the boundaries of pain and hope, destiny and defiance. For Naruto, it was the unyielding belief that every scar told a story of survival and strength, that every hardship endured was a stepping stone toward a future where his true worth would shine unimpeded. For Heles, it was the quiet conviction that even the darkest destiny could be reshaped by the courage to embrace one's own vulnerability, to dare to hope for a future not defined solely by destruction. Their pasts, rich with both sorrow and the unspoken promise of redemption, served as a silent testament to the resilience of the human and divine spirit. And as the winds of change began to stir with the energy of an approaching conflict, both warriors felt the pull of an uncharted future, a future where the shadows of the past would not be mere relics of pain, but the very foundation upon which a new legacy would be built. The tension in the air was electric, charged with the anticipation of a fate that was about to be rewritten. With hearts steeled by the trials of their past and eyes fixed on the uncertain horizon, Naruto and Heles moved forward into the unknown. In the interplay of light and shadow, in the silent promise of an approaching storm, the echoes of yesterday found their place in the narrative of tomorrow, a narrative that promised danger, redemption, and the unfathomable possibility of change. And so, with the weight of centuries and the hope of a future unbound by the chains of regret, their separate journeys converged into a single, inevitable path, a path that would lead them into the heart of darkness, where every moment, every breath, every choice would reverberate with the potential to transform not only themselves, but the very worlds they inhabited. As the chapter of shadows slowly yielded to the uncertain light of a new day, the stage was set for the next act in a saga defined by passion, conflict, and the relentless pursuit of redemption. The echoes of the past would continue to resonate in every step, every whispered memory, and every defiant heartbeat. And as Naruto and Heles braced themselves for the approaching storm, The promise of transformation hovered tantalizingly on the horizon, a promise that the next chapter would bring revelations, alliances, and the fierce, unyielding struggle to reclaim what was once thought lost. In that charged silence, the universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the collision of two indomitable forces, a collision that would shatter the confines of the past and illuminate the path to a future where hope and defiance reigned supreme. The shadows had spoken, and now, as the promise of a new beginning shimmered on the cusp of destiny, both warriors took their first steps toward a confrontation that would alter everything. Their journey, marked by the scars of history and the promise of renewal, was far from over. The past had left its indelible mark, but it was the choices of the present, and the hope for the future, that would ultimately define their legacies. And with every heartbeat echoing the silent refrain of survival and change, Naruto and Heles advanced, unaware of the full magnitude of what awaited them in the next chapter, a chapter where the convergence of their souls would forge a bond as enduring as the stars themselves. The shattered remnants of a once majestic citadel loomed under a bruised sky, its arches and columns bent like the memories of a forgotten era. Amid these ruins, dust motes drifted in the stray shafts of light. Here, in a clearing that served as an unintentional haven from the chaos outside, Naruto and Heles found themselves forced into a fragile alliance. The roar of distant conflict still echoed, but for the moment, silence reigned in this broken sanctuary. Naruto's boots crunched over gravel as he moved warily toward a collapsed wing of the structure. His eyes, usually alight with resolve and a hint of mischief, now flickered with cautious calculation, every muscle tense with the remnants of adrenaline, and the familiar weight of his headband pressed against his brow as a reminder of the path he had chosen, one of unyielding honor in a world that no longer made sense. Across the ruined courtyard, Heles emerged from the shadowed archway. His presence was imposing, a being carved from cosmic duty and burdened by divine responsibility, his eyes as cold and unreadable as the abyss. Yet in that moment, something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of mutual necessity. A low, rumbling sound heralded the arrival of their common enemy, and in an instant, both warriors tensed. They exchanged a brief, measured glance that spoke of both defiance and a tentative trust. Without a word, they moved in tandem toward a safer corner of the crumbling edifice, a silent pact forming beneath the weight of inevitability. Inside the hollowed interior, the air was stale and heavy. Cracked stone walls and shattered relics of a bygone era bore witness to centuries of conflict. Naruto found a battered bench and sank onto it, still alert despite the momentary lull. He turned his gaze to Heles, who stood a few paces away, leaning against a fractured column. For a long moment neither spoke. The silence was not empty but laden with the unspoken histories of two souls burdened by duty. "Seems fate enjoys irony," Naruto finally said, his voice low and rough around the edges. He tapped a callous finger against his thigh, eyes studying the interplay of light and shadow on Heles's face. Two warriors, one fighting for hope, the other for destruction, forced to share a roof, if only for a few hours. Heles's gaze narrowed, but his tone remained measured. "Irony is merely the lens through which destiny reveals its designs," he replied. His words, though seemingly cold, carried a hint of wistfulness. "In our brief concord, we find that our masks conceal more than our identities. Perhaps we are not so different." Naruto's lips twitched into a half-smile that did not reach his eyes. "Different? I carry my demons as badges of honor. And you, what do you carry, aside from the weight of cosmic duty?" A silence fell between them, punctuated only by the distant clash of battle and the occasional groan of settling masonry. Slowly, as if compelled by an unseen force, Heles stepped closer. His voice dropped to a whisper that barely stirred the dust at their feet. "I carry the loneliness of inevitability. Every act of destruction, every decree delivered from beyond mortal ken, erodes a piece of what might have been." His eyes, dark and fathomless, flickered with an emotion long suppressed. Naruto's gaze softened ever so slightly. "Loneliness. I know it well. I was shunned, mistrusted, forced to prove myself over and over. Sometimes, even when victory is near, the cost feels insurmountable." His admission hung in the air like fragile glass, glinting in the half-light. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden tremor, a deep, resonant pulse that vibrated through the floor beneath them. The enemy, relentless and unseen, had made its presence known once more. Without preamble, both warriors snapped into readiness. Naruto's hands instinctively curled around the hilt of a kunai, while Heles' posture straightened as if he were summoning reserves of power hidden behind his divine facade. From the gloom beyond the corridor, a creature emerged, a twisted amalgamation of shadow and sinew, its eyes burning with malevolence. It advanced with a predatory grace that betrayed its otherworldly origin. In an instant, the silence shattered. Naruto and Heles exchanged a brief nod, the earlier exchange now transformed into a silent command: fight together. The ensuing battle was a flurry of motion and precision. Naruto's agile form darted in and out of the creature's reach, his body a study in disciplined ferocity. Each strike he delivered was accompanied by a flurry of desperate yet artful acrobatics. Heles, in contrast, moved with a measured intensity, each step deliberate as he unleashed devastating energy blasts that lit up the dim corridor. Their movements interwove in an uneasy symphony of combat, distinct styles merging with a shared purpose. At one point, Naruto vaulted onto a fallen beam, launching himself high before descending with a fierce, arcing kick aimed at the creature's midsection. Heles' eyes narrowed as he calculated the trajectory, and with a sudden burst of energy, he intercepted the enemy midair. The impact resounded, a collision of brute force and calculated power, sending shards of stone and dark energy spiraling outward. Their eyes locked for a fraction of a second, a spark of understanding amid the chaos, before the battle claimed their full attention once more. When the creature finally fell, its form dissipating into swirling darkness, the two warriors stood amid the carnage. Breathing heavily, Naruto slid down from the beam and dusted himself off. Heles remained upright, his expression inscrutable, though a faint glimmer of respect shone in his eyes. Without breaking the shared silence, Naruto offered a hand, an unspoken gesture of camaraderie. Heles hesitated for a heartbeat before accepting. Their grip was firm yet tentative, as if each man feared that too much closeness might shatter the fragile truce. The moment passed, and with it, the echoes of the skirmish faded into the distant rumble of ongoing conflict outside. Once again, they found themselves seated together in the ruined hall, the intensity of battle subsiding into a quiet, reflective stillness. Naruto broke the silence as he examined the scars, both physical and emotional, that lined Heles' face. "You fight with precision, but I see more than just duty in your eyes. There's regret, maybe even hope. Tell me, what weighs on you?" Heles' gaze drifted to a mosaic on the wall, fragments of a once beautiful tale now chipped and worn. "I was born into a role I never chose," he murmured, each word measured. "Every command I execute strips away another fragment of who I might have become." He paused, his eyes meeting Naruto's. "And you fight for a future that you believe in, but you have known loneliness, rejection. How do you bear it?" Naruto's jaw tightened as memories surfaced. Days of isolation, nights filled with the sting of scorn and the burden of responsibility. "I bear it with every scar," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "Each wound is a lesson, each trial a reminder that hope is earned, not given." His words, simple yet resolute, hung in the air as if offering both a confession and a challenge. In that moment, the space between them expanded and contracted with unspoken understanding. They began to share small stories of their past, a childhood marked by solitude, the relentless drive to prove themselves, and the quiet desperation that sometimes accompanied victory. Their dialogue was not grandiose or laden with hyperbole. Instead, it was a series of measured admissions that revealed the core of their identities. Heles recalled a time when, as a nascent god of destruction, he had questioned the very nature of his existence. "There was a moment, brief, but searing, when I wondered if destruction was all I was destined to do. I saw the beauty in what I was forced to unmake, and for a moment, I longed to create instead," he confessed, his voice barely audible. The admission struck Naruto as deeply personal, a mirror to his own struggles with legacy and identity. Naruto's eyes softened as he listened. "I've often wondered if my path was ever truly mine," he said slowly. "In a world where every step is dictated by duty and expectation, how do you decide what's real? I fight because I believe in change, But sometimes, the cost of that belief is too high to bear alone. Their words were punctuated by the creak of ancient wood and the whisper of winds slipping through shattered windows. Outside, the threat that had drawn them together continued to loom, a reminder that their temporary respite was only a pause in an unending storm. For a time, they worked in tandem to secure their makeshift shelter. Naruto cleared debris while Heles reinforced the crumbling doorway with salvaged stones. Their movements, though practical, carried a subtle rhythm that spoke of newfound respect. Even in silence, their actions conveyed a promise that together, they could stand against the relentless tide of chaos. As twilight deepened, the ruins took on a somber beauty. Shadows lengthened, merging with the dark stains of battle and the weight of their shared burdens. Over a sparse meal of dried provisions and water, the conversation turned to the future, a future that seemed as uncertain as the shifting light outside. Tomorrow, Naruto began, breaking the stillness. We have to move. The enemy won't linger here forever. But tonight we rest. Perhaps we can learn something about who we are beneath these masks we wear. His words carried both resolve and a trace of vulnerability, an invitation to peel back the layers that had kept them distant for so long. Heles regarded him quietly, his eyes reflecting the flicker of a small, salvaged lantern that cast dancing shadows on the stone floor. I have spent eons hiding behind duty and power, he admitted slowly, his tone thoughtful. If there's a chance to glimpse what lies beneath, if it means understanding this world and perhaps even myself, then I will take that risk. Their dialogue was measured and deliberate, each word a step toward uncharted territory. As the night deepened, they settled into a wary truce that bordered on intimacy. In the silence between shared stories and lingering glances, the two warriors began to see one another in a light that transcended the roles they were forced to play. Naruto's mind wandered to moments when laughter had been his refuge, a sound that had eluded him in the midst of conflict. He recalled a time before the weight of destiny pressed him down, a fleeting moment of joy with friends who believed in his dream of peace. Now, in the quiet of this ruined sanctuary, that laughter felt like a distant echo. Heles, on the other hand, seemed to wrestle with memories of an existence that spanned cosmic cycles, a time when the lines between creation and destruction blurred, and every act of annihilation carried an undercurrent of regret. Their conversation meandered through landscapes of pain and resilience. Heles spoke of the isolation inherent in his power. I was built to end, not to nurture. Every spark I release is both a beginning and an irrevocable end, Naruto countered with a conviction born of hardship. Yet every scar is a reminder that something once lived, something worth fighting for. Even in the darkness, there is a light, fragile, but undeniable. The words hung between them, either offering a definitive answer but instead opening a door to a shared understanding. Outside, the wind began to rise, carrying with it the scent of impending rain and a promise of renewed conflict. In that charged atmosphere, every sound was amplified, the drip of water from a broken spout, the soft rustle of fabric as they shifted in their seats, and the distant clamor of unseen foes. As the hours slipped by, both warriors drifted into a fitful sleep, each haunted by dreams that blended past regrets with future uncertainties. Naruto dreamed of a world where bonds were unbreakable and every sacrifice was met with understanding. Heles saw visions of swirling cosmos, of battles that ended in silence, and of a single, unyielding truth, that even gods were not immune to the longing for connection. Before dawn, a sudden movement stirred them awake. A harsh, metallic clang echoed through the corridor, followed by hurried footsteps. Naruto's eyes snapped open, and he reached instinctively for his kunai. Heles was already on his feet, energy coalescing at his fingertips in a subtle glow. They exchanged a glance that acknowledged the looming threat even as they struggled to understand the intrusion. A small band of figures, shrouded in ragged cloaks and moving with determined stealth, crept into the sanctuary. Their eyes darted across the room as they whispered urgent commands to one another. The intruders were not the monstrous enemy from before. They were human, or at least something human. Their tense, clipped language betrayed a desperation that resonated with both Naruto and Heles. Naruto crouched behind a fallen pillar, his voice a hushed command to Heles. We need to find out what they want. They're not here just to hide, they're here for something. Keep your guard up. Heles nodded, his voice a low rumble. I will intercept them. Stand ready. Slipping silently into the shadows, Heles advanced toward the cloaked figures. His approach was predatory yet measured, a study in grace and lethal intent. He paused at the threshold of a narrow corridor, listening to their hushed conversation. "We cannot wait any longer," one of them hissed. "The message is clear. The destruction has already begun," another voice, sharper and more urgent, replied. "They claim that the alliance between the ninja and the god is the key. If they persist, our masters will consider it a challenge to the established order." Heles's eyes flickered with interest. The notion that their union held significance beyond the battlefield was unsettling and dangerous. As he absorbed their words, he realized that these men were agents of a power that sought to manipulate the fragile balance between creation and annihilation. Without hesitation, Heles stepped from the shadows, his voice slicing through the murmurs. "You tread on dangerous ground," he warned, each syllable deliberate and forceful. The cloaked figures spun around, startled. One of them, a gaunt man with eyes as cold as flint, stepped forward. "And who might you be to threaten us? A harbinger of destruction? Or merely a pawn?" Heles's gaze hardened. "I am no pawn. I serve a destiny that neither you nor your masters can fathom. Now speak your purpose." The gaunt man's lip curled into a sneer. "Our purpose is to preserve balance. Your alliance with the ninja disrupts that balance. You hide behind masks of honor and duty while sowing the seeds of chaos." At that moment, Naruto emerged from behind another pillar, his presence a reminder that the alliance was no idle curiosity. "Chaos?" he retorted, stepping forward with measured intensity. "We do what we must to prevent a greater calamity. Perhaps you should learn that destruction is not the only path to change." The tension crackled like static in the confined space. The intruders eyed each other warily, uncertainty rippling through their ranks. The gaunt man's gaze flitted between Naruto and Heles, as though weighing a decision that could tip the scales. "Your words hold little weight here," the man finally declared. "Our orders are clear. You will surrender the secrets of your alliance, or face the consequences." Naruto's fists clenched at his sides. His tone was low and resolute as he answered. "I share no secrets with those who value control over hope. If you seek power through fear, you are already lost." For a heartbeat, silence reigned as the two sides measured their next move. Heles's eyes shone with an inner fire, a determination born not of conquest, but of the desire to protect something fragile and transformative. "We have no secrets to surrender," he said evenly. "But if you persist, you will force our hand, and hand or not, every choice has its price." The standoff stretched on, fraught with the potential for violence yet suspended by the mutual recognition of the stakes involved. Finally, the gaunt man gestured sharply to his cohorts. "This meeting is not over. We will return when our masters see fit. Consider this a warning." With that, the intruders melted back into the shadows, leaving Naruto and Heles alone once more. The brief confrontation had been a stark reminder that even in moments of tentative unity, the outside world conspired to fracture any semblance of peace. Naruto exhaled slowly, his gaze lingering on the empty corridor where the figures had vanished. "They're not just enemies on the battlefield," he murmured. "They're ideologues, determined to bend reality to their own warped vision." Heles nodded, his expression inscrutable. "Our alliance is a threat to them. But perhaps it is also the only thing that can forestall the destruction they crave." His tone carried both a promise and a lament, as if the revelation had deepened his own internal conflict. As night surrendered to the tentative glow of early dawn, the ruins became a crucible of reflection. Naruto and Heles retreated to a secluded alcove, a small, vaulted chamber sheltered by debris. There, amidst the cold stone and flickering lantern light, they allowed themselves the luxury of conversation unburdened by immediate combat. Naruto leaned back against the cracked wall, eyes distant yet piercing. "I never imagined a day when I'd find myself sharing a shelter with a god of destruction," he said with a wry edge. "Yet here we are, two souls bound by necessity rather than choice." Heles regarded him quietly for a long moment before replying. "Necessity is a powerful force. It can forge bonds in the crucible of hardship that no amount of choice could replicate." His voice was soft now, almost vulnerable. "Tell me, Naruto, what do you see when you look in the mirror, when the world is silent and you are alone with your thoughts?" Naruto's eyes flickered with an intensity that belied his calm facade. I see a fighter, a survivor. I see scars that tell my story, a story of relentless struggle and sometimes of hope. And I wonder if that hope is enough to heal the fractures within me. He paused, searching for the right words. And you, Heles, do you see redemption in the mirror of your own existence? For a long moment, Heles was silent. Then, with a measured exhale, he answered, I see the echo of what could have been. In every act of destruction, I glimpse a lost opportunity to create. Yet, the role I play is inexorable, a script written by forces beyond my control. His gaze met Naruto's, and in that exchange, the weight of his truth resonated, a man, or God, trapped by destiny yet yearning for something different. The conversation ebbed and flowed as the pale light of dawn deepened. Their words, while measured, were charged with the gravity of their shared experiences. They recounted moments of vulnerability without embellishment, each admission raw, honest, and unadorned. In this way, the veneer of their personas slowly began to crack, revealing the human hearts that lay beneath the armor of duty and power. Outside, the day broke fully. The muted grays of night gave way to a hesitant blue, and the distant echoes of conflict grew louder with the coming of morning. Yet within the alcove, the atmosphere remained one of fragile intimacy, as if time itself had chosen to pause in deference to their newfound understanding. Naruto shifted, his voice quieter but resolute. Our paths have always been solitary. But in this moment, I sense that perhaps we can redefine what it means to be alone in the fight. Maybe, together, we can find a way to honor our pasts while forging a different future. Heles's eyes glistened with an emotion that was nearly imperceptible, a mixture of hope and sorrow. The future is uncertain, and the price of change is steep. But if our union can temper the extremes of our natures, perhaps it will serve as a bulwark against the forces that seek to tear this world apart. He paused, the silence heavy with implication. There is risk in this alliance, Naruto. But there is also a promise that in the merging of our strengths, we may uncover something unexpected. Their words hung in the still air as the sounds of reinvigorated battle drifted from beyond the walls of their refuge. The delicate calm was punctuated by the distant clamor of metal on stone and the rising crescendo of voices in conflict. Each sound carried with it the reminder that their respite was temporary, that every moment of vulnerability was borrowed time. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through a broken window, Naruto rose, determination etched on his face. We must be ready, he said firmly. The enemy will not wait for our reflections. Every secret we share, every truth we uncover, must be used to protect what remains of our world. His voice was a clarion call, echoing with the urgency of a man who had seen too many losses to allow complacency. Heles nodded, his posture straightening as he prepared himself for the inevitable return to battle. Our masks may conceal our true selves, but here, in the quiet before the storm, we have begun to reveal what lies beneath. Let this moment be both a reprieve and a reckoning, an interlude before the next wave of conflict. The dawn's light brightened, and with it, the sounds of the enemy's approach grew unmistakable. The air outside the alcove pulsed with impending violence, a reminder that their shared haven was no sanctuary, but a temporary lull in a relentless onslaught. Naruto stepped toward the door, pausing to glance back at Heles. In that look was a silent vow, an acknowledgement that what they had shared in those precious hours was more than a truce. It was a beginning, a seed planted in the barren soil of war, one that might one day blossom into something transformative. Stay close, Naruto said, his tone gentle yet firm. We fight together, not just against the enemy, but against the forces that would keep us forever apart. Heles's response was a simple nod, his expression unreadable yet resolute. I will, he replied, his voice low and steady. Together, we will confront whatever comes. The quiet chamber, once filled with the soft murmur of confessions and tentative hopes, now throbbed with the rhythm of impending battle. As Naruto and Heles stepped out into the corridor, the scars of the night were barely healed, yet the fragile bond forged in shared vulnerability lent them strength. The enemy waited in the corridors of the ruined citadel, and with every measured step, the two warriors carried the weight of their revelations and the promise of what might be. Every footfall resonated with the determination of hearts unburdened by isolation. Every whispered exchange between them was a thread woven into the tapestry of an alliance that defied the conventional boundaries of destiny. And as the distant din of conflict swelled into an almost tangible force, both Naruto and Heles knew that the coming battle would test not only their combat prowess but the very truth of the connection they had dared to reveal. In the waiting moments before the next clash, the silence between them was not empty. It was pregnant with the possibility of change. With the enemy's approach drawing ever nearer, their alliance had become a lifeline, a small beacon of unity in a world where every decision could be the difference between hope and annihilation. As they advanced toward the next corridor, every step deliberate, every breath measured, Naruto's thoughts lingered on the promise of tomorrow. He knew that the battle ahead was not merely for survival, but for the chance to redefine their destinies. And in Heles' steady gaze, he saw a reflection of his own resolve, a silent understanding that even gods and warriors, bound by fate and burden, could find solace in one another. The corridor stretched before them like a darkened vein in the heart of the ruined citadel, and as the first enemy silhouettes appeared at its end, the two fighters exchanged one final look, a look that carried the weight of all they had shared, and all they still dared to hope for. In that charged moment, every secret, every scar, every whispered confession merged into a single, unyielding purpose. They stepped forward together, leaving behind the fragile sanctuary of vulnerability, and headed toward the looming confrontation. The night's revelations would echo in every clash of steel and burst of divine energy. And though the outcome remained uncertain, one truth shone clear amidst the gathering storm. Beneath the masks of duty and power, two souls had dared to trust one another, and that trust might just be the spark to ignite a new beginning. As the corridor swallowed them into its depths, the promise of a new chapter lingered in the cool pre-dawn air. The alliance, fragile yet potent, carried with it the seeds of transformation, and with every heartbeat, every measured step toward the enemy's lair, Naruto and Heles moved closer to a future defined not by the inevitability of destruction, but by the hope of something more profound, a hope that would challenge the very foundations of their worlds. The corridor's shadows deepened, and the clash of forces ahead promised further revelations. In the shifting interplay of light and dark, the alliance's fragile foundation trembled with potential, and with the silent promise of battles yet to come, the stage was set for a new legacy to be written. The tension, like a taut bowstring, vibrated with the next movement of fate. And as they advanced into the unknown, the lingering question hung in the air. Could two souls, forged in the crucible of duty and destiny, truly find a way to redefine the boundaries of their worlds? The answer lay just beyond the next threshold, a promise of conflict, of intimacy, and of a transformation that would challenge everything they had ever known. With the first echoes of enemy voices reverberating off ancient stone, Naruto and Heles pressed onward, each step a testament to the fragile hope born in the quiet moments of vulnerability, and each breath a defiant claim against a future dictated by chaos. The alliance had been sealed in whispers and silent vows. Now, with the rising tide of battle at their backs, they carried that bond forward into the unknown. And so, beneath the masks that had long concealed their true selves, two warriors stepped into the next chapter of their intertwined fates, leaving behind the sanctity of their temporary refuge, yet carrying within them the promise that even in the darkest moments, the light of understanding and trust could blaze a trail toward redemption. As the enemy's presence loomed ever closer, the fragile peace of the ruined citadel dissolved into a renewed clamor of conflict. Yet amid the chaos, the alliance between Naruto and Heles had become more than a tactical necessity. It had become a beacon of possibility, a testament to the strength that lay in embracing the truth behind the masks. The coming battle would determine not only the fate of their worlds, but also the future of the connection they had so cautiously nurtured in the quiet hours before dawn. In the charged silence that followed their final steps into the corridor, every heartbeat, every whispered promise, and every memory of vulnerability served as a harbinger of what was to come, a suspense that would carry them, and the readers, into the next chapter of their perilous and transformative journey.